Hello. So, how did that go? I haven't asked you on episode 2 about episode one's exercise where you read Psalm 23, asked the Lord for one of the verses to stand out, and then just prayed and said, Lord, what do you want to say to me through this? And I think often the three questions that works very well when we attempt to hear God. I just find, when you're speaking to someone with a different accent or it's there's noise outside and whatever, if you ask them a question, the likelihood of you hearing their answer are better. So, for example, if I ask someone what their name was, even if it's a complicated name, I stand a better chance of understanding that they're giving me their name than if I asked them which town they're from, for example. So I find that for myself, as I practice hearing the Lord's voice, asking questions does help. Not just yes and no questions, because I think there your own brain is definitely gonna kick up a fuss, but just to and also sometimes I hear God, it's worse when I try hard to hear Him. So I would also recommend that when you want to hear God, that you give Him time to speak, that you actually ask Him, that you wait on Him, maybe go for a walk, maybe start cooking, and moments even outside your set, personal time with the Lord in the mornings or your prayer times, that you would go, Lord, I'm here, and I still would love to hear your answer to that question. And the three questions that I think are always biblical and safe to ask is, Lord, show me something about yourself, something about your character. So if that's one question you can write down. Lord, what do you want to say about yourself? Lord, what do you want to do inside of me? Because God is forever changing us and working in us. The sanctification process is definitely going on, even though we've been justified through Christ, through faith in Him. He loves us too much to leave us the way we are. Hey, you know that line. He loves us just the way we are, but too much to leave us the way we are. So He's always working in us. And often He works in us by telling us what He's doing, highlighting something, working on something. And then the third thing would be, Lord, show me what you want me to do today. Like, so maybe there's someone He wants you to pray for. We always have a job to do. Someone He wants us to contact, to encourage. Someone He wants us to maybe share the gospel with. So that is a wonderful way that He often leaves us. Because we are, as much as we His lovers and His daughters and sons, we're also His servants. And we do work for Him. And He's a wonderful, wonderful Lord and Master to work for. Because He doesn't, if you ask something of us, He also empowers us to do it. So remember, we spoke about listening, hearing, recognizing His voice, but then also obeying. So you've got those three. First thing, Lord, please tell me something about yourself. Lord, what do you want to do inside of me? And Lord, what do you want to do through me? And that could be that week or that day. So I would suggest re-look at your Psalm 23, Psalm 23 scripture just for a minute, and maybe ask those three questions. And there might not be an answer to all of them in there, but that's another way you can chew over it. And maybe already you've heard the Lord on that. Something that also that scripture says that every now I'm thinking Afrikaans, every situation, every case, everything must be confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses. And God often speaks like that. I believe because it's not a science and it's an art, because we're not in heaven yet and that we see Him face to face and we know Him and He knows us fully and everything is like there's no veils anymore. He's very careful to repeat and to say the same thing in different ways. That's why it's so important that we get to know the voice of the Lord in different ways, because we might read something in the scripture in our quiet time. So we read that scripture in Psalm 23, and then through the day, we might see something in nature and that we'd go, wow. And that might remind us of another scripture back to scripture, or it would be such a vivid picture, illustration. Jesus spoke through parables, and often the prophets in the Old Testament spoke, and New Testament spoke through vivid natural things, the potter, the clay, sheep, shepherd, all these things we see both New and Old Testament. So we can expect then that He'll keep speaking. And often as we go along, then maybe we will, on the Sunday, we will listen to a sermon by our leaders, and it would be on that thing, or one line, we just go, wow, that's it. And I often find that at the time, I'm not always 100% sure that God is speaking. There is a stirring in my spirit. I'm suspecting He's speaking. But as it gets confirmed and He says the same thing in different ways, I can start looking back. And it's probably at that point where I confuse you as a young believer and say, God's been speaking to me about His righteousness. No, He didn't walk into my room and did a whole speech about His righteousness. No, on Monday morning, I read a scripture and it just highlighted His righteousness to me. Then that evening, I heard a testimony from a friend, and it was something about the righteousness of God. Then the Wednesday night at home group, we were doing a Bible study, and it was about the righteousness of God. And as we go along, and by the end of that week, I look back and I go, God spoke to me through scripture on Monday morning. God spoke to me through a friend on Monday night. A friend says to me, God spoke to me through believers studying the Word together and sharing what they see, what God's highlighting in Scripture. On Sunday, I heard one of my leaders preaching, and through the preaching of the Word, I heard God. Can you see what I'm saying? I think as an artist, it's not that hard for me to understand, because even as artists, the way we paint in layers and the picture comes clearer, and there's something of that in it. It's not a science, it's an art. You too can hear God. So now refer to your Psalm 23 with your with the honey badger that I heard. I still want to go and do that, but what I would suggest, like I suggested in episode 2, is that you episode 2, yes, honey badger, that you'll read about God's creation, so something He reminds you of, something He highlights to you. If you feel like, oh, I'm blank, He didn't highlight anything, pick an animal that you're curious about and go and learn about it, and then trust the Lord for a revelation from that. That's what I taught you yesterday. So can you do that exercise? How did it go for you? You can share with your friends what you've learned, maybe in a Zoom call or in a over tea. But also with that, take it a bit further and ask God, is there something here about yourself that you want to reveal? Is there something here you want to do inside of me, change inside of me, something that's weak or that you want to strengthen, that's sinful, that you want me to turn away from, that's broken, that you want to heal? Or then the third one, Lord, what would you like me to do? And even just now, I haven't read up about the honey badger, but even just now, for me, that would be something like there's a tenaciousness and a fearlessness in the honey badger, and that our God, as much as He's our meek and mild one who came, the suffering servant to die on the cross, He is also the one who rose from the dead, who is coming back to judge the living and the dead. There's a ferociousness. He's not just the lamb, He's the lion. So for me, that the honey badger speaks of something of that, of God's incredible toughness and power. Like He laughs at the nations that's trying to conspire against Him. But then also the honey badger has a nose for honey, and just the way that God seeks us out and finds us, just so beautiful. And then if I have to ask God, okay, Lord, what would that speak to me? And I believe, and it's confirmation for me of what the Lord's been speaking to me about a while, that all of us will have to step up a gear in prayer, that as evil is increasing, as darkness is increasing, there's a ferociousness that needs to come into us, a roar in terms of prayer. We need to learn to fight in prayer like honey badgers, not just gently coming to God, but also fighting in prayer and being, not just giving up, being steadfast and ferocious in prayer. And then, Lord, what do you want me to do? I think that would be the thing. He wants me to pray. And even in that sniffing, to find the honey of God, to find the sweet words of God, and to pray that until it happens. Cool.